welcome to keep it in there. But you guys are welcome to talk. Let me just make a quick intro here.
Okay.
Cool. So I met Edward a while back when I was in Chicago looking for a place to train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I used to come there and I didn't have a place because our classes were Tuesday, Thursday, and I used to do judo. And I was like, man, I need Jiu Jitsu in my life, or more of it at least. And then somehow I came across uh, Edward's gym. I think it was recommended to me by somebody. Somebody's like, hey, this new guy opened a place at the old complex that closed down for COVID. And then they, I guess, reopened, and then Edward basically took that room that was occupied by the previous gym that I was at, actually. It's pretty funny. So I came there and it was like instant connection. I mean, it was, he's a great guy. He's excellent jiu-jitsu instructor. I just thought, like, let's get him on here and let's have him basically tell the story. Because when he told me the story of him quitting the job and sort of jumping all in with both feet, I'm like, man, Kevin's got to hear about this. So
I got hype.
it's all you guys now.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that you as soon as you said, you're talking about some guys. Hold on, I'm trying to set this stand. But when you said you had a guy who quit his job and started a gym, I'm like, damn, dude, because I would like to do a similar thing one day. And I looked into your school a little bit. I did a little bit of research. I don't know, how long have you owned it?
We opened July 1st of last year.
Oh wow. So you're not even a year old.
Yeah. Nope. Not even a year old. Yeah. It's
And how's it been so far?
oh, it's been awesome. So I gotta give a lot of credit to my coach, Scott Gave, who owns Fit to Defend Academy, and also Jeff Seraphin, who owns Seraphin BJJ down in Chicago. Um, for me, it was I I knew that the way I was going to get better at jujitsu was to teach jujitsu. So I'd been helping out a lot in the kids class at Scott's school, and man, everything was falling into place. Like my fundamentals were getting better. Like if anybody wants to get better at jujitsu, the way you do it is to ask your coach to help out with kids class, even though that seems like a big old pain in the butt. That like it really is a window, an opportunity to nail down your fundamentals in a completely new way. Think about, and I know I'm getting off topic here, but like think about if you've ever taken a seminar with a guy who's been around a very long time, like 3 or 4th degree black belt, like who has been there and knows where the bodies are buried. They will show you small things that you should know in positions that you think you know well, that'll completely change your game. This is what the kids class does every week.
Yeah.
Right? So I think I went to Jean-Jacques Machado. He was up here at 10th Planet Chicago. I think I spent $150 listening to him talk for 2 hours, and it was worth every penny. It was awesome. However, the stuff that he taught was stuff that I either should have learned or should have remembered that I learned from year one in jiu-jitsu. And it completely freshened up my game and solved problems that I'd been trying to solve with more complex solutions for a very long time. Anyway, so let me rewind a little bit. I got to give a lot of credit to Scott. I opened a gym one town over, and he was completely supportive, and he encouraged me to do it. He asked me what help I needed. He was there on my opening day, and
Damn.
and when his folks come and visit me, he the he's not jealous. Now I didn't expect him to be, but you could see how he might have reason to be.
He's full supportive though.
Absolutely. And so, and he
That's awesome.
understood really clearly that like the reason I wanted to do this was because of jujitsu, not because I wanted to make a living doing this, even though making a living is important. But jujitsu is really important to me for some strange reason. And I knew I would get better if I taught. And so, yeah,
So it was more like fulfillment for yourself. More
yeah,
fulfilling to open up a
absolutely.
jiu-jitsu gym.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I saw that
Yeah.
I think it said on your website that you were a part of like a Fortune 500 company. What were you doing
Uh,
beforehand?
no, it wasn't a Fortune 500 company because it's not publicly traded. I worked for a private um, fixed income investment house. I sold
Okay.
bonds to banks. I sold bonds to banks. Um, for a certain type of personality, super interesting business. Um, Essentially, my entire day was cold calling bank presidents and engaging them in a conversation about how they needed to invest excess deposits at their bank into the bond market. And
Mm.
you can imagine how, like a guy who's the president of a bank or a woman who's the president of a bank, she's got lots of things to do, and engaging her in a conversation about her bank's investment portfolio is a very difficult thing to do, right? Why would she talk to a stranger, or why would he talk to a stranger about about what's in that portfolio and why they should engage our services in deciding what's in that portfolio? That's what I did all day long. and I loved it because it was a challenge, right? And so
Right.
the question is, can you engage someone intellectually in just a few seconds and get them emotionally involved in a conversation about something that is both important to them and very expensive? That like not just expensive, but it tests the trust of their employees and their customers and the investors in their bank and the board. Like this is like the number one worry of a banker, making sure that they have the funds to keep the lights on, and the investment portfolio is just part of that.
That's that's just a crazy mindset to even have right there. Like I don't know this person either. So it's almost in jiu-jitsu terms, I relate it kind of to a tournament. Like you have no idea who or what that person has that you're stepping into, but you got to make quick adjustments and you got to think on your toes and
Mm-hmm.
outperform. And that's just like
Yeah.
that's not something you hear about salespeople who are, good at sales and good at selling their product. But I can imagine someone with a lot of investment or money or capital to go in there and tell them like, what they should do with it.
Yeah.
You gotta,
Yeah. So that's the other thing. Like, most of these guys and ladies, 30 years in the industry. No one, like, how do you convince someone who has 30 years in the industry, who has advanced degrees, they teach at banking schools? How do you convince them that this stranger that called them on the phone has a solution to this problem that they either think they have or maybe they don't think that they have? Right? It's tremendously challenging, and for the same reason that I love jujitsu. Like any day on the mat, I could get my leg broken. Right? That sort of
yeah.
high risk, high reward is like, but so at the same time, like most of those calls ended up either in voicemail, or they hung up on me, or they told me like never call me again, but some of them ended up being productive conversations with people who I ended up building trust with. Um,
Wow.
and uh, uh, and jujitsu offers the same sort of risk reward. Like there's still tremendous risk, but usually I also end up with a great interpersonal dynamic with the people who come into the gym. Like we click and engage with each other and become part of a community a whole lot faster.
Yeah, dude. Our gym like sometimes feels like a bunch of lost puppies, but somehow like you got like you either got people there that have like their shit together, or you got people who are just like wild, who just like decide. So whenever it's like someone like you, a job like that sounds like you're kind of focused, you got your shit together. What the hell made you want to just start teaching instead? Like what was the changing point where you're like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna open up a gym? Were you tired of chasing people
Well,
down? Were you
no, I knew I was going to open up a gym.
okay?
I knew I was going to open up a gym probably at Blue Belt. The plan was, well, I didn't think I was going to open a gym at Blue Belt. I knew
No,
when I was
no.
a Blue Belt
I
that
got what you're
eventually I
saying.
was going to open up a gym. Yeah.
You had the bug early. You're like,
Well, I from really early on, I understood that jujitsu and fight sports was going to be something I did forever. That whether I did it as a student or whether I did it professionally, that like this is something I'm never going to leave behind. It's something I'm married to, and it's just like the relationships you build with people and the skills that you build. Like it, I'll get back to this, but as a point of pride as a man, and I'm not saying that women don't have this at all, but like um, there's a few things that a man should do, like uh, uh, and no judgment on anybody who doesn't do these things, but like there's some primary drives that a man has, and fighting is just one of them, right? Like
yeah,
I can't
combat.
imagine. Yes, yes. Okay, now there are not many ethical and safe. Well, I don't want to say safe. There are not many ethical outlets for that drive,
Right.
and so when you find one, it makes sense, at least in my mind, to follow it so that like that drive doesn't follow you around unsatisfied,
Right.
right? So the and then you get in a room with other people who are also fulfilling that drive in a positive way, and then they end up having conversations about their families and their careers and their personal life and their feelings, and then you have this lab where um, not just men but people, but mostly men, right? um, uh, have this very valuable exchange of 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 life, and it even though good jujitsu is important, like that's so much more important. That community is so important, and the fact that we're stuck together like that we've developed these relationships means that we'll end up doing jujitsu better.
Right. It's it really is such a weird thing, and I'm relating with you a lot. I knew pretty early that because I did different martial arts, and then I joined like an MMA gym, and then when it came down to jiu-jitsu, that's the one that stuck with me. And I knew pretty early on, I'm like, this is the shit. Like I like the chess match. I like the
Yeah.
you're always like a centimeter away from, breaking your leg, as you said. And
Yeah.
it could happen so freaking quick. And but you do
Yeah.
build like this weird brotherhood slash like this bond between everybody there. And
Hmm.
just it seems to be people who like to push themselves and people that like to, you know, because in jiu-jitsu you're setting goals, you always want to get better. So to have that mindset of like, everyone in there who keeps showing up consistently is trying to get better at something, or they're
Yeah.
running from something. Um,
Hmm.
but either way, if they're running from something, it's a really good outlet because, whether you're an angry person or, as you put it, you're someone who you have that deep down, like, how do you explain it? Like, as a man, you have that kind of combat side of you, but this is a good way to get it out ethically. I
Hmm.
think I like the
Hmm.
I like the way you explained it. I don't ever really hear it explained so professionally. Like it's just a good but it is it's a good place to kind of, if you're walking around mad all the time and you got that thirst to, fight somebody or something, you go into a gym, you hash it out on the mats and you get rid of that aggression safely or in a safer manner. And
Yeah.
then you tend to get those endorphins, you tend to build good relationships, and all that kind of stuff is just really good for your mental, mentality, your morality.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and what I like to see is I see a lot of times, dude, it flows over into people outside their life, outside into their real life. And one thing I noticed from your website is it said that you teach techniques that only work in real life. Like you like to.
Yeah. So
I was
I
wondering what
got
you meant by all that, or what that exactly meant.
a call. I got a call from a guy. Uh, I got a call from a guy a few months back who he used to teach in the room that my school is in right now. And I said, "Hey, that sounds awesome. I'd love to compare notes. Why don't you come in? Our open mat is on Sunday." And he came in and he brought in this big binder, and he was showing me. So he had a binder of like techniques that he had taught, and some photos of him teaching with other people and going to tournaments and seminars and such. And one of the photos that he showed me was him and George Dillman. I'm not sure if you're familiar with George Dillman. He's like famous for like shooting his chi at people and touching people and knocking them out. And
I've seen that guy
so
before.
one Yeah, right. And this was sort of what this guy was about. Okay, now jury's out on whether that stuff works. I'm not gonna like say that,
You don't want to touch on
right.
that.
Right. No, I'm not gonna throw this guy under the bus. Like maybe he knows better than me and he's able to do it. Right. He didn't do it at open mat, but maybe he can. I don't know. Right. um
You're very optimistic.
right. um I have I think fighting is sacred, right? So
Right.
if you were a Spartan father, what would you teach your sons? You would teach your sons stuff that worked, right? Like I cut a guy's
Yes.
head off using this technique, right? So I know it works because I saw it work. Because you know that your sons' lives depend on them getting good instruction, and so it really does anger me when uh, the traditional martial arts community will trade bogus techniques for money.
Yeah.
Like that it you don't
It's
understand. Some kid is going to get his head bashed in on the playground doing what you taught him to do,
yeah, it's
right?
dangerous.
Or oh, this is the other one. This is the other one. Women's self-defense classes. You If you are telling women that they should engage in striking battles with their attackers, you have you have you sign them up to lose, and lose in like the one fight that they're going to be in, because women tend to like avoid physical confrontation with strange men, right?
Right.
Out
Yeah.
of a sense of out of a sense they tend to. Let's don't accuse me of stereotyping them, but they tend to.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and when they finally get in one, in for the woman who invested the 3 years or so that it takes to get a taekwondo black belt, and they never showed her how to avoid a punch to the face, which is the first thing that her attacker is going to do. Like
Right.
that that doesn't make sense. And so what that on the website, what that promise is about is like, I'm not going to teach out of the book. I'm going to be that came out wrong. Not I'm not going to teach it because it's in the book. Right? There are a lot of things that are in the book that have been in the canonical, like it doesn't, whatever martial art it is. Most martial arts are thousands of years old, right? Because humans have been beating each other up forever.
Right.
I'm not going to teach it because it's in the book. I'm going to teach the stuff that works best. I'm going to make sure I include some warnings about context, right? Because there's a lot of stuff in jiu-jitsu that works great in pure jiu-jitsu, doesn't work so good in fights.
100%.
And then I'm also going to make sure that if you are here to learn self-defense and jiu-jitsu is the tool that you take out of the toolbox, that you understand which pieces of jiu-jitsu are best for that. And also I also am of the opinion, and I got to thank Renzo Gracie. I read Renzo Gracie's book Mastering Jiu-Jitsu, and in the front of that book really reads like an MMA manual. And so if you get, I'm gonna change the topic again. If you go back and you look at some of the early Gracie Challenge videos, right? These are guys who are here trying to sell jiu-jitsu, but they begin with probing strikes, right? They, as I like to put it, they learn enough strikes to buy their jiu-jitsu a ticket to the show.
Okay.
And so
That's interesting.
And so in my mind, your jiu-jitsu is not complete unless you can throw a punch and evade a punch, right? How are you going to get to the clinch if you can't strike and you can't defend strikes?
That's a good point.
So, like, imagine, and maybe this match happened and I didn't know it. Imagine like Shinya Aoki versus Floyd Mayweather. Who wins that fight?
Floyd's got a good jab, and he's good at going backwards. But,
yeah, he is. He is. It's a toss up, right?
Yeah, I'm like going through a lot of possibilities in my head, but I want to root for the other guy.
I see Floyd winning that fight 4 out of 10 times.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because we've had MMA guys in our gym, and it took a long time, and I finally met somebody who had such a good jab I couldn't get close to him, and it was the most frustrating thing ever because I was like, because we were like just like play sparring around and stuff, and I'm like, I know if I get this guy, like it's good, but I just could not, like his jab was like a javelin, dude. Like it was, and and that's literally the original way I learned jiu-jitsu is what you're saying. My first coach, he taught you at least like how to cover up and throw a 1-2 to close the distance, or like a jab and an overhand and to get to the hips, and a lot of his jiu-jitsu was like almost like wrestling jitsu rather than like gi jitsu. And I like what you say because you've got a gym and you've got all sorts of people. You've got competitors, hobbyists, you got people who are in there for fitness. Then you got people who like no gi, you got people who like the gi, you got people who like competition. I'm not necessarily, I don't mind competing, but it's not like my thing. I don't like the point system. It's just not very, doesn't get me excited while I'm competing to think about points.
I'm with you.
And I'm more of like a self-defense. It drives me crazy. And then, you got reps and it's advantages and all this weird scoring system. And then you're just like, why did I show up here? But especially if you're competitive.
Yeah.
But I like to think more of like a self-defense standpoint. Like, this is a good spot, but your face is exposed, or,
yeah.
And
I think the ultimate, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say my original coach kind of taught down the same lines of what you're saying is like, which I highly respect that and I really like that. My context of, teaching things that work in real life was more of a mental aspect because I'm just obsessed with like people's mentalities and stuff. But now that you explain that, that's a really good point that I never really picked up on. Like there is a good case to be made for teaching people how to actually defend themselves if they're spending the money and time and putting the confidence in themselves in that situation, because it is dangerous if you teach somebody that you can tap them. What is that, the guy that has like the magic touch, you tap them in the neck and they drop, like hitting chakra points like that shit, you're gonna end up hurt. And what were you gonna get into, or what were
Oh yeah, so like you said you hate the points game, and I completely agree with you. In my mind, the ultimate in my mind, a jiu-jitsu tournament should be basically an MMA fight in the gi in some sort of
Okay.
enclosure with corners like a ring.
Interesting.
So, because there are no fights that have no strikes, right? So I watch. This is one of my vices. I watch a lot of street fights, either on like YouTube or Reddit, and well, because I'm in the fight business, right? Like I did it long before I was in the fight business, but to study how people actually fight informs how we should teach people how to fight. And we live in a striking culture, right? Nobody starts a fight by grabbing their opponent like we do in class every day, right?
Right.
They all start by trying to hit each other, right? Now, the great news for jiu-jitsu people is that anytime someone like windmills a punch, they give us a double leg, right? Right?
Or they get
and you could
close.
right, and you can tell, right, and they're very aggressive, right? So they come forward as soon as you see that forward movement, you know it's safe for you to shoot because they're just doubling your closing speed.
Right.
However, if you don't, I don't think jiu-jitsu does enough. I don't think the sport-oriented jiu-jitsu that a lot of gyms are teaching goes far enough in teaching people how to deal with that situation if at the same time they're selling jiu-jitsu as self-defense, right? This is a great thing that you should learn for self-defense. And then they teach them how to win tournaments. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. I'm
And so
100%
I'm
with
not
you on
saying
that.
I'm not saying that teaching people how to win tournaments is a bad thing, or that sport jiu-jitsu people wouldn't completely wreck most people on the street, because they would. I'm saying that if you watch serious fights, if you see serious fights, I mean, there are some guys who really know how to box who nobody knows, right? There's Joe Schmoes on every corner who know how to box, and if you didn't spend any class time learning how to deal with that, then you're gonna go to sleep, and you didn't buy your jiu-jitsu a ticket to the show.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. How do you teach your students? And if so, like how do you, not to like steal your curriculum or anything, but like is
Well,
that something you guys
so
practice?
for the first 9 years of my martial arts journey, I went to an MMA school. It's Dave Strasser's Freestyle Academy of Martial Arts. And Dave Strasser was the head instructor there, and I also learned under, for the most part, I was taught by Brian Garrity. Dave was a ex UFC guy. He first he fought all over the world, and the story he tells is that the UFC was after him for close to a decade, but his agent for some reason didn't want to refer him. Like they didn't make the connection. So Dave ended up fighting in the UFC, and you can go on YouTube and watch some of his old fights. Um, he fought Dave. He fought George St. Pierre before George St. Pierre was in the UFC. He fought him in Canada.
Oh shit. I've probably
Um,
seen that video if it was pro. I'm a huge GSP fan.
right? Yeah. So like having a loss to George St. Pierre is not a black mark on anybody's record, right?
No, it's not a big deal.
And then Brian Garrity, who was also an incredible martial artist, he was on the Ultimate Fighter with like Nate Diaz and Gray Maynard and Matt Wyman and who's the other guy? The guy from Boston. He's so awesome, and I can't pull his name down now.
You had
But
Manny.
it
Was
was
that
a
Manny
great
Gambiro?
season. He was on that. Yeah,
Manny
Manny was. I think Manny was there that year. Was Manny there? Yeah, Manny's a judo guy. That sounds about right.
Manny Gambino or whatever. Man,
Gamburian.
you're going back.
Manny Gamburian.
Gambiro. There we go.
Yeah. Joe. He didn't win the show. but like incredible martial artist. Um, so for like 9 years, I trained under those guys, and then eventually I moved across town, and my wife and we had small kids in the house. I just needed to find something that was closer to my house, and so and I also realized that the MMA game, as I got older, the MMA game wasn't going to stick. That striking is a speed game, and that I really needed to focus on my grappling if I wanted to continue to have success, right? Which doesn't mean that I like striking any less. It's just that like you never get your speed back. You know, you can keep power a lot longer than you can keep speed. And so I
Once you lose
just wanted
that
to spend more
timing,
time
dude.
on my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I still got the timing. Timing is important, right? Timing beats speed, but speed is still pretty damn important. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
so I my wife bought me the Groupon for Fit to Defend. She just looked for local jujitsu places, and this is the one that was literally closest to our house as a Christmas present. And so as soon as I got the Groupon, I called Scott up right away, and I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a place to train. I've been training for a while, and and man, did I ever pay!" So like, one of the things about MMA guys is they have a really urgent form of jujitsu because you can't just hang out in half guard, right? The dude will pound your face, right? You
No.
can't wait to set up your submissions because he's interrupting all the lulls in the fight with punches, right? Whether they're from the top or from the bottom, like and there's if you're not holding him down, you're letting him up, right? And the same thing. So it's very urgent. But then you put on the gi and things slow down, and they slow down for a reason, right? Like those pauses, those pieces of stalemate are purposeful. And I didn't understand any of that, right? And so but I was not well suited at all for the gi game. And I paid dearly. I got bow and arrowed so many times.
It's one of my favorites.
I just wasn't aware that collar was there. I never thought about it, right? As long as you don't give up your back, you're okay. And so I would sit in these guys' laps, and they would grab my collar and pull it across my neck, and it was terrible. And so that's that experience is one of the reasons that I think that jiu-jitsu doesn't prepare people for actual fights. That think about as popular as the no-gi game is right now. Like the gi is dead, so they say, right? The gi is dead until you get jumped at the gas station wearing a hoodie, right? Or someone in a hoodie decides to take your money at the ATM, right? Or someone in a hoodie, I don't know, pushes you in a public place in a way that you feel like you need to take them down. All of a sudden, that hoodie is awfully convenient, right? Or the shirt that they're wearing, or the jacket that they're wearing. Oh, I remember, the guy in Iowa starts with an M. He was the middleweight champion, UFC. He was on Joe Rogan talking about getting caught in a fight in Iowa. But he was in a bar, and the bar erupted into violence, and he's just trying to find his way out. And he collar choked 3 guys unconscious on his way to the door. You know which story I'm talking about?
Yeah, they'll probably come back to us.
Starts with an M.
It's gonna come back to us.
Yes. He doesn't have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He learned wrestling. He learned some submissions, probably from some catch wrestlers somewhere. And he had a very successful. Just over the border of Illinois and Iowa, right across the river. I think Bettendorf, Iowa. I think that's right. His name will come back to me. Anyway, so he was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He was telling this story about choking people unconscious with their jackets because it was wintertime in Iowa. Square with the story that square with the idea that no-gi jiu-jitsu is the ultimate form of jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's boring to watch. However, it's real. And I
Yeah.
believe that the real life applications of gi jiu-jitsu are deeper than the real life applications of jiu-jitsu, of no-gi
So
jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I prefer gi, but I'm probably better at no-gi.
I wanted to circle back to your tournament idea and why you think.
Oh, yeah. So, like, why do regular people join martial arts? Like, the way we sell martial arts to people is we say, look, fighting is part of the human condition. History sort of dictates that at some point you'll be physically threatened by someone. And you will pay a tremendous price for not being prepared for that day. And so you should take a fighting lesson. Now, if you're training a professional fighter like a boxer, yeah, boxing is okay for self-defense, but we know it's not complete, right? Because it doesn't address takedowns. We know that wrestling is probably it's good. It's a good thing to know if you ever get in a physical confrontation. But we also know it's not complete. It's not, no one makes the promise that wrestling will prepare you for combat with another person. And I think credibly in jiu-jitsu, that jiu-jitsu prepares you to fight another unarmed person. The only point that I'm making is that the further we take it from the conditions under which normal people end up in unarmed combat with each other, the less we keep the promise that jiu-jitsu is good for self-defense. And in real life, people wear clothes. In real life, when people fight, they try to hit each other. And in real life, when people fight, there are barriers, right? There are limits, like the bar that the guy got into a scuffle in has walls, right? And tables and chairs. They're like other limits on the fighting space. Okay, so now think about a jiu-jitsu tournament. Let's think about a no-gi jiu-jitsu tournament. There's no clothes, and you can't hold on to the clothes. There's no strikes. You can't use strikes, and there's no barriers. It's limits to the fighting space. There's no opportunity for your opponent to use the limits of the fighting space against you. So if you go to a no-gi jiu-jitsu owner, and I'm not picking on the 10th Planet people because they're awesome. I love them. The 10th Planet jiu-jitsu is not self-defense. Great jiu-jitsu, but it's not self-defense. And if they're selling jiu-jitsu as a possible solution to self-defense problem, then less out. And so I think that if you were to test jiu-jitsu, you should test it like it was tested to UFC 1, where like there's a barrier. You can wear the gi, right? And I would make the gi mandatory. And
I love that.
And
I love it.
there's punches, and you have to deal with strikes, right? And that would teach people to use jiu-jitsu to solve the striking problem, because it's really good, but not if you don't make it part of the practice.
Right. That's such a good idea. That makes complete sense. My thoughts were always like, I always preferred more of like a fight to win or a one-on-one jiu-jitsu contest. You know what I mean? So talking about points,
Yeah.
just kind of, and the other thing about tournaments I don't really like is you have to be prepared for X amount of people, and you don't know who or what, so you can't really go balls to the wall every single match.
Yes.
Whereas
Yes.
when you got one person, you can kind of like, you know, you can judge as you go. You can go all in on something, you can be scrambly, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
like you have to balance like whether you're competing like conserved for energy or balls to the wall for this guy, or you got the long leg or the short leg. So, you know, just kind of like It's more of like a fun thing and a good experience just to get your mind through like that pressure and performing well under pressure.
Yeah.
But I've always like, there's been times where I've sat there and thought about like what would my ideal tournament rule set be, and the way you just described it's a really good idea because it makes complete sense, and you're tying it more into like almost like a self-defense style, which shit, I mean that could change everything, dude. I mean the whole people train for point system and spider guard and daily Hiva and shit like that.
Yes. Yes.
Like people wouldn't be training that anymore if there's punches or or like small section. And you gotta learn how to take people down off a wall. And wall work is a beast of
Yes.
its own,
Yes.
dude.
Oh, that. Yeah. It's wall work is so beautiful. I love wall work so much. Yeah.
You gotta be some sort of psychopath because that shit
Yeah.
is hard.
Well, like so, but like think about those corny demonstrations that you know the like. There are some guys in the jiu-jitsu universe who like um they teach a self-defense version of jiu-jitsu, which actually doesn't really work in tournaments at all. Right? Like
Yes.
you know how they'll put someone up against the wall, and so this is how you defeat a front choke, right? Which is stupid because front chokes never happen. Right. Well, no, I shouldn't say that front chokes never happen. I say that front chokes are such a poor technique that, like, when someone front chokes you, protecting their face, your hand protecting their face. Unless your arms are shorter than theirs, right? There's no need to even worry about a front choke. They don't work. They don't work that well, right? So, but you know,
Right.
I'm not going to call out any names or pick on anybody, but like as another like end of the pendulum, the pendulum can swing the other way where you teach something that's so self-defensy that they have someone who's so powerful that they can just pick you up and throw you on the ground, right? Okay, this is where
Right.
jiu-jitsu is really good. Think about how we encourage people to say pull guard, because under certain rule sets, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? So instead of
Starting
right,
to do you have a good internet connection where you're at right now? Sorry to throw that
here,
off,
let
but
me no, hold on. Let me see if I might. How's this? Is this any better?
maybe David said if we turn off the video, it'll up the quality. So I'm
Uh,
turning the video
hold
off
on.
just in case. 'Cause I think we're getting I think we have a little bit of a delay, and I think it's getting shaky.
Okay. Let
And
me see
we're
if I can
getting.
turn the video off. Let's see. Okay, I turned off the
That
video.
means David's still here.